All right, so today we're diving into the world of modern, energy-efficient modular homes,
Yeah.
and we're going to be focusing specifically on information, that we got from Therma House Limited.
Yeah, you provided a really fascinating set of materials for us to look at.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
We have the company's own documentation.
Yeah.
We have their structural guarantee, a confirmation regarding fire protection,
Uh-huh.
and importantly, we have the Irish standard for timber frame construction, IS 440. So this gives us a really good kind of 360-degree view of what goes into these homes.
Yeah, and that's really what we want to try to do today is extract the most important information from all of this.
Absolutely.
What makes these homes high quality, how are they built, and, what certifications and standards are they meeting or exceeding
Okay.
to give our listeners a really clear and concise understanding.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable for people.
Yeah, so why don't we start with just a quick overview of Therma House Limited?
Sure.
They were established in 1990, so they've been around the block.
Yeah, that often signals stability in this industry.
Yeah, and they bill themselves as a leading European provider of energy-efficient homes.
That's a big statement.
It is a big statement.
And I guess it's backed up by their production rate of 2 to 6 houses per week,
Yeah, year-round.
year-round.
Yeah.
So that suggests a very well-established and efficient operation.
Yeah, and they're able to offer up to a 30-year warranty on the building structure.
Wow,
That's huge, so that shows a lot of confidence on their part.
it really does.
Just to give an idea of how precise their manufacturing is, they talk about how they have automated production with plus or minus 1 millimeter accuracy for elements up to 12 meters long.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So for the listener, that translates to, tighter building envelopes, less air leakage,
Right.
and ultimately a more energy efficient and comfortable home
Yeah.
for years to come.
Yeah, so they also mentioned how prefabricated homes are very popular in countries like Germany, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Czech Republic, which tells me this is a very established construction method in Europe.
Yeah, not some brand new experiment.
Yeah, and they're claiming a lifespan exceeding 100 years for these homes and up to 50% reduction in heating costs compared to traditional methods.
They are ambitious figures.
Yeah, they are ambitious figures.
And they directly relate to their claim of meeting and exceeding EU energy efficiency standards.
Right.
They mentioned the standard of 58.5 kilowatt hours per square meter per year,
Right.
and they're saying that their systems will perform even better than that.
Okay.
We'll see how their U values support that later.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
But regarding that 100-year lifespan, well, that's a long-term projection.
Yeah.
It suggests a design and a material selection that is really focused on durability.
Mm-hmm.
And that could certainly influence the long-term value
Yeah.
and even mortgage possibilities for a home like this.
Right, right. So just thinking long term.
Thinking long-term.
Yeah. And then they emphasize that there's no hidden costs, which is always good to hear.
Transparent pricing,
Yeah.
always reassuring.
Yeah. And finally, their estimated delivery time is about 3 months after the contract is signed.
Okay.
On-site assembly taking approximately 20 days.
So that's remarkably quick compared to a traditional build.
Yeah, that's fast.
And that speed is a major advantage of modular construction
Okay.
because the majority of the construction is happening in a controlled factory setting.
Right.
It minimizes the delays that you might get from weather
Yeah.
or the complexities of on-site coordination.
Okay, so now let's get into the nuts and bolts of how these energy-efficient marvels are put together.
Let's do it.
And they call their system Ecocquick Professional System.
Okay.
And so they use prefabricated wall and ceiling panels,
Right.
and they build those around a KVH frame.
Now, for those who aren't familiar, KVH is construction's Volholz.
Oh, okay.
It's a high-quality, dimensionally stable engineered timber,
Okay.
meaning it's less prone to twisting and warping than standard lumber.
Okay, got it.
And that contributes to a more durable and airtight structure
Right.
for you, the homeowner.
Got it. Okay, so they provide a really detailed cross-section of the wall and the various layers.
Okay, let's break it down.
Yeah, so starting from the ground up, we have native soil and then a sand base.
Okay.
And then we see layers of polystyrene, XPS, F50, and EPS.
Now, why that two different types of polystyrene in the foundation?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Well, often different types of polystyrene are chosen for their specific properties
Okay.
for different areas.
Okay.
XPS, or extruded polystyrene,
Okay.
generally offers higher compressive strength,
Okay.
and better resistance to water absorption.
So it's tougher.
It's tougher,
Okay.
which makes it ideal for below-ground applications,
Yeah.
where it's going to be facing pressure from the soil and potential moisture.
Right, so it's down there in the muck.
Exactly.
Okay.
EPS, or expanded polystyrene, is also a good insulator
Okay.
and can be more cost-effective for other foundation areas.
Yeah, so it's like a good all-rounder.
Yeah, think of XPS as the tougher, more water-resistant layer.
Our workhorse. Exactly. Okay. All right, so moving up from there, we have a vapor and radon membrane barrier.
Now, these are crucial
Yeah.
for protecting your indoor air quality.
Right, and then you've got steel ribs and concrete B20 in the foundation itself, and then a moisture-proof seal on top of that.
So it sounds like they're really focused on preventing anything unwanted from getting in from the ground up.
It seems like it, yeah.
Yeah, and preventing moisture ingress is fundamental to the longevity of any building.
Sure.
And a radon barrier is vital for your health and safety,
Right.
particularly in areas with known radon issues.
Of course.
So these are all standard best practices in modern construction.
Okay, and then moving upwards, we encounter the KVH wood frame.
Right.
60 by 160 millimeters for the external walls.
Okay.
And 60 by 100 for internal walls.
Got it.
And then there's 15 centimeters of insulating mineral wool in the external walls, floor, and roof, but only 10 centimeters in the internal walls and between the ceiling beams.
So why the difference in insulation thickness?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, the thicker insulation in the external envelope.
Okay.
The parts of the house that are exposed to the outside world.
Right.
That's primarily for maximizing thermal efficiency.
Okay.
Keeping the heat inside during the colder months and outside when it's warmer.
Right.
And this is a direct impact on your energy bills and your comfort.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The thinner 10-centimeter insulation in the internal walls is mainly for acoustic insulation.
Okay.
So it helps reduce sound transfer between rooms.
Oh, okay. So you can have your teenager blasting their music in their room.
Exactly.
And you won't hear it.
And you can have peace and quiet.
Okay. All right, good. And then after that, we have another vapor barrier foil.
Okay.
And then they use Fermacell board at 12.5 millimeters for internal walls and ceilings.
Okay.
We'll dig into Fermacell a little bit later.
It has some unique benefits.
It does, yeah.
We'll get to that.
And then even more insulation after that styrofoam this time.
Right.
At varying thicknesses for external insulation.
Okay.
And finally, acrylic plaster on the exterior.
So it's quite a layered system.
Yeah, it's a lot of layers.
Each layer playing a very specific role.
Right.
In the overall performance of the house.
Yeah.
Contributing to its structural stability, energy efficiency, weather resistance,
right,
and your comfort inside. And
they also mentioned Styco joist for the ceiling structure.
That's likely chosen for its strength and spanning capabilities.
Okay.
And the 22-millimeter OSB board above the ground floor ceiling, that probably adds structural rigidity to the floor.
Okay.
Makes it feel nice and solid underfoot.
Yeah, no bounce.
No bounce.
Okay, and then standard roof construction with trusses, foil battens, and steel tile roofing.
Pretty standard.
Yeah, okay, so let's look at what is included in the base price of one of these homes.
Okay, what are we getting for our money?
Yeah, so the main structure, obviously, pre-wiring, pre-plumbing, and the foundation are all included.
All right, so that's a good start.
It is a good start. And then specifically, the roof includes the metal tiles, the PVC soffit and gutters, and the metal external window sills.
Okay.
The external walls have that acrylic plaster finish that we talked about.
Right.
The windows are UPVC triple glazed.
Now, that's a significant plus for retaining heat and reducing noise.
Absolutely, yeah. Big selling point.
Big selling point.
And the external doors are Polestar metal doors, which are known for their security and insulation. They also include the chimneys and the ventilation ducts.
So the inclusion of the pre-wiring and pre-plumbing done in the factory, that is a major efficiency of modular construction.
It is, yeah.
It really speeds up the on-site assembly.
Right.
And it can lead to better quality control.
Yeah.
As these systems are installed in a controlled environment.
Sure, yeah.
And triple glazed windows, of course, are a key element.
Right.
In achieving that high energy efficiency.
Reducing heat loss and drafts.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then moisture-proof insulation, which is polyethylene foil, is also included.
Right.
And the thermal insulation, which we talked about, the mineral wool and the EPS at those thicknesses.
Right.
And then for the installations, you've got water and sewage within the house and foundation, heating connections and radiators, and a tailored electrical system with standard power points.
So it sounds like a fairly comprehensive offering.
It does, yeah.
Provides a really good foundation for a finished home.
Right.
But it's equally important to be aware of what is not typically included.
Right, of course, yeah.
So they specify that the interior requires plastering and painting to your taste.
Right.
Internal doors and light fixtures,
Right.
usually not standard.
Right, so you can customize.
Allowing for personalization.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then looking at external works, the client is responsible for the substructure for the foundation slab.
Okay.
Connecting to external utilities.
Right.
Things like grounding and surge protection once the electricity is connected.
Yeah.
And landscaping.
Of course.
And then, very importantly, their initial cost estimate does not cover site preparation or any local council fees that might be required.
Right. So while the house structure itself goes up quickly, there are still site-specific tasks and costs that you need to factor in.
Very important.
Yeah, that's a critical consideration.
Right.
While modular construction accelerates the building of the house itself, the overall project timeline and budget needs to account for these external works and regulatory fees.
Right. Okay, well, let's dive deeper into some of the specific materials.
Okay, yeah, there were some real aha moments in the details.
Yeah, there were some real standouts.
Yeah.
First up, Fermacell boards.
They emphasize these quite a bit.
They do, and with good reason.
Yeah, what's particularly interesting about Fermacell is how it differs from standard plasterboard.
Okay, how so?
Well, they highlight its high fire resistance.
Okay.
Achieving an A1 classification, meaning it's non-combustible.
That's huge for safety.
Yeah, huge safety advantage for you and your family.
Right.
So that's peace of mind right there.
Yeah, and they also talk about how hard and durable it is. I mean, it was really surprising to see that a single wall plug can hold 50 kilograms.
That's a lot of weight.
It's a lot of weight.
That's considerably stronger than typical plasterboard.
Yeah, and they said it can handle 30 kilograms per screw and 17 kilograms with just a nail for hanging pictures.
Now that's impressive.
Imagine how easy it would be to hang shelves or artwork.
Right, you wouldn't have to worry about finding studs all the time.
Exactly, yeah.
So Fermacell is a gypsum fiberboard.
Okay.
Essentially a reinforced gypsum material.
Okay.
It's made with gypsum and paper fibers mixed together.
Okay.
And this homogeneous composition gives it that exceptional strength and load-bearing capacity compared to traditional gypsum plasterboard, which has a softer gypsum core with just a paper facing.
I see.
So it's really the fibers that give it that extra oomph.
That makes sense. Okay. And they mentioned its sound-absorbing qualities as well.
Yeah, which would make for a quieter, more peaceful indoor environment.
Right.
And they also talk about how it promotes a healthy indoor climate.
Yeah.
Because it's made without any harmful binding agents.
Right.
And it's considered ecologically neutral.
Okay, so it's green.
Yeah, and plus it's stable enough to be used in rooms with higher humidity.
Oh, okay.
Like bathrooms and kitchens.
Right. So it can handle a little bit of moisture?
Exactly. It's a truly multifunctional board.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Offering fire resistance, structural strength, acoustic insulation, and moisture resistance all in one.
One package?
Yeah, the fiber reinforcement is key to its high stability and ability to withstand those loads.
Yeah, so really when you compare it to standard plasterboard, the benefits are clear.
Very clear.
Yeah. Okay. Next they highlighted the KVH wood. And they talk about how it's free from biological corrosion, it has low flammability, and it resists twisting and cracks.
Right, and that's all because it undergoes chamber drying.
Right, which they say avoids the need for chemical preservatives.
Exactly. So that creates a healthier indoor environment.
Yeah.
The chamber drying process is really vital here.
Okay.
By carefully controlling the drying, they reduce the moisture content of the timber significantly. And that makes it much less susceptible to fungal growth and insect infestation.
Ah, okay.
Hence the free from biological corrosion.
Right.
It also minimizes the likelihood of warping and cracking.
Okay.
Leading to a more stable and long-lasting structural frame for your home.
Right, so it's just more stable.
More stable, more predictable.
Yeah, and then the absence of chemical preservatives is definitely a plus for indoor air quality.
Yeah, a more natural living space.
Yeah, okay, and then they really stress the high quality of the KVH wood. They talk about how it's ensured through both their own internal quality control, but also external production supervision.
So there's oversight.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very controlled and reliable material.
Yeah, okay, and then there's the mineral wool from rock wool.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah, and they listed quite a few benefits for this.
Yeah, rock wool is a well-regarded brand of stone mineral wool.
Okay.
Known for its excellent performance characteristics.
Okay.
And they highlight its durability stating that its insulating properties remain consistent over time.
Oh, that's a good.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
And they talk about how it provides superior thermal insulation
Okay.
with a low thermal conductivity, which is crucial for minimizing heat loss in winter and heat gain in summer.
Right.
Which directly impacts your energy bills.
So that's important.
Very important.
Yeah. And then they say it helps prevent thermal bridges.
Now, thermal bridges, for the listener, are those spots in the building envelope where heat can kind of escape more easily.
Right. Okay. So you want to avoid those.
You want to avoid those. You want to seal up that building envelope.
Got it. And then they also point out that it's non-flammable.
Yeah. It achieves the highest A1 fire class rating.
Wow.
Meaning it won't burn or produce smoke.
Okay, so that's huge.
And it even acts as a fire retardant.
So it's a big safety feature.
Huge safety feature, especially compared to some other insulation options.
Right.
It gives you that added protection and peace of mind.
Okay, good. And then they also talk about how it offers excellent acoustic insulation.
Yeah, helps dampen noise from outside and between rooms.
Right.
It creates a more peaceful home.
So you can really shut out the world.
You can.
If you want to.
Yeah.
And then they say it's vapor permeable, which is important because it allows moisture to escape.
Right, from the wall assembly.
Right.
Preventing condensation and potential mold growth.
Right, so it breathes.
Exactly.
Okay. And finally, they note its moisture resistance, so it doesn't readily absorb water, which helps maintain its insulation properties even in damp conditions.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So it sounds like a really high-performing
It does.
and resilient insulation choice.
Yeah. Okay, well, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of U values and energy efficiency.
All right, let's talk numbers.
Yeah, because they provided a table comparing the maximum U values from the Irish Technical Guidance Document L, which is from 2022.
Got it.
With their own Therma House System standards and even some optional upgrades that they offer.
Okay.
Now, for anyone who's unfamiliar with U values, a U value indicates how much heat can pass through a material.
Right.
So the lower the U value, the better the insulation.
Right. The less heat loss or gain you'll experience.
Yeah, think of it like a thicker, more effective blanket around your home.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah, so what's immediately clear from the table they provide is that across all the elements that we've talked about, you know, the pitched roofs, the flat roofs, the walls, the ground floors, even floors with underfloor heating, the standard U values offered by the Therma House system are consistently and significantly lower than the maximums that are permitted by Part L.
That's good news.
It is good news. Yeah. So, for example, for pitched roofs with insulation at ceiling level, Part L allows a maximum U value of 0.3.
Right.
Whereas Therma House's standard is 0.14.
Much lower.
Much lower, yeah. And they even have an option that can get you below 0.13.
Wow.
Yeah. So similarly for walls, Part L allows up to 0.6, but their standard is 0.14 with an option for 0.11.
So again, much better.
Much better, yeah. And for ground floors, the limit is 0.6, but they achieve 0.14 standard with an option below 0.10.
So these are substantial improvements.
They are.
In insulation performance. And that's money in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they also provide U values for their windows and doors.
Okay.
So their standard for windows is 1.10 with an option to go down to 0.9.
Okay.
And for doors, it's also 1.10 with an option below 1.0.
Right.
And for reference, Part L has a general maximum of 1.4.
For windows, doors, and roof lights.
So again, they're exceeding those minimum requirements.
Right. Yeah.
And these better performing windows and doors
right.
will further contribute to reduced heat loss and a more comfortable home.
Right. Okay. So they really emphasize how all this superior thermal performance allows them to easily achieve a BER, a rating.
Which is the highest.
Which is the highest energy efficiency rating in Ireland.
That's great for the homeowner.
Yeah. So this translates directly to lower energy consumption and those significant heating cost savings.
Right up to 50%, as they claim.
Yeah, that we talked about earlier.
Right.
So the data really seems to support their claims.
It does. These significantly lower U values indicate a highly effective and well-insulated building envelope.
Right.
Which is really the cornerstone of any energy-efficient design.
Okay, so now let's bring in the Irish standard IS 440.
Okay, see how this all fits together.
Yeah, because this is a really crucial document because it lays out the specific requirements.
Right. For timber frame construction in Ireland.
Sure.
And it covers everything you know from the quality of the materials to the details of the design and the construction.
Right. So we need to see how Therma House's approach
Yeah.
aligns with these national standards.
Exactly. Yeah. So the scope of IS 440,
Okay.
it applies to platform timber frame construction for buildings up to 4 stories or 10 meters in height, with a maximum fire resistance of 60 minutes, and where timber is used in service classes 1 or 2.
Right.
So Therma House's typical residential homes would generally fall within these parameters.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So looking at materials, IS 440 stresses that all materials used have to comply with relevant Irish or European standards or have appropriate approval certifications.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And for timber specifically, it requires a minimum strength grade of C16 and a maximum moisture content of 18% at the time of fabrication or delivery. And then it discusses the necessity of preservative treatment for timber used in external wall panels, although this excludes the sheathing boards. So this aligns with Therma House's use of KVH timber. Because due to that controlled chamber drying process, they state that it doesn't require additional chemical treatment against biological decay in typical residential applications covered by Service Class 2, which the standard addresses. However, IS 440 does provide guidelines for when preservative treatment is necessary, based on the timber's intended use and its potential exposure to moisture.
So it's a case-by-case basis, depending on the specifics of the application.
And then for sheathing materials, IS 440 lists plywood meeting ISEN 636 and OSB 3 meeting ISEN 300 as acceptable options, as well as other materials that have been formally approved. It also specifies requirements for breather membranes, including their vapor resistance and the need for a valid approval certificate.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And when it comes to fasteners and connectors, the standard emphasizes adherence to relevant EN standards and the use of appropriate corrosion-resistant materials based on their intended service environment. And it even specifically mentions stainless steel staples for securing breather membranes. So they're really getting into the details here.
Yeah, they are. And these material specifications in IS 440, they serve as important benchmarks for quality and performance in timber frame construction in Ireland and Therma House by utilizing materials like KVH Fermacell and rock wall, all of which have their own certifications and demonstrated performance characteristics, appear to be meeting and, in some instances, exceeding these fundamental material requirements.
Okay, good. So what about fire safety?
Now, that's critical.
It is, yeah. And IS 440 dedicates a significant section to fire design and protection.
Covering things like fire resistance ratings for different structural elements. The reaction to fire classifications of the materials used. Requirements for non-combustible or limited combustibility materials in certain areas. The use of fire protective linings, compartmentation to prevent fire spread. The installation of cavity barriers within walls and roofs, and the use of fire stops to seal any gaps or penetrations.
So they're thinking about all the potential weak points.
Yeah, it's very thorough.
And this is absolutely critical for safety.
It is.
The standard provides very detailed guidance on achieving specific fire resistance ratings for various parts of the building. And it underscores the importance of using materials and construction methods that have been rigorously fire tested.
Of course.
And it also outlines how walls and floors should be constructed to create these fire-resistant compartments, limiting the spread of fire and giving you more time to evacuate safely.
So it buys you time. Exactly.
And we mentioned earlier that we have this Park West fire protection letter. Which would likely contain specific details confirming that Therma House's construction systems meet these fire safety requirements.
Yeah, unfortunately without the full content of that letter.
We just have the letterhead and the signature.
We can only acknowledge its significance.
So IS 440 also delves into structural design. Taking into account factors like wind loads, vertical loads from the weight of the building and its contents, the design of roof floor and wall diaphragms to ensure the overall stability. And it even addresses the concept of disproportionate collapse.
Which is interesting, which is the ability of the structure to remain stable, even if one part is damaged or fails.
So it's that redundancy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a safety net.
Right.
built into the structure.
Yeah, so the standard emphasizes the necessity of performing thorough structural calculations to demonstrate the adequacy of all load-bearing elements and their connections.
And they also consider the expected minimum service life of residential buildings,
Right.
which they estimate to be between 50 and 60 years.
Okay.
And we have Therma House's 40-year structural guarantee
Right.
signed by their CEO, Lucas Waller,
Right.
which again suggests a strong commitment
Yeah.
to the long-term durability of their structures.
Yeah.
Even though we don't have the complete terms and conditions of that guarantee.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to manufacturing IS 440 mandates that a factory production control system
Right.
has to be in place.
Right.
To ensure that all the timber frame panels are manufactured according to the design specifications and the requirements of the standard.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And it also sets out specific tolerances
Okay.
for the dimensions of panels, their straightness, and the precise positioning of fasteners, like nails and screws.
So they're really controlling every aspect
Yeah.
of the manufacturing process.
Yeah, and this emphasis on factory production control
Right.
is a key advantage of prefabricated construction because it ensures a consistent level of quality and accuracy
Absolutely.
in the manufacturing process.
Yeah. And the specified tolerances
Right.
help ensure that the panels will fit together correctly on site.